Orla pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the research station, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air of Kepler 442b. The growling came again, low, rumbling, almost comical in its earnestness. She turned slowly, expecting to find one of the native Kethril predators that had been stalking the human settlement for weeks. Instead, she found herself staring at something much smaller. The creature couldn't have been more than knee-high. Its 6 limbs trembled as it attempted to puff out its thorax, and its twin sets of mandibles clicked together in what was clearly meant to be threatening. The bioluminescent patterns along its carapace flickered nervously, blues and greens where they should have been aggressive reds. "Oh," Orla whispered, crouching down. "You're just a baby." The young Kethril's growl faltered, dissolving into a sound somewhere between a wheeze and a chirp. It took a stumbling step backward, clearly unprepared for her reaction. Behind her, boots crunched on the frost-covered ground. James came around the corner, plasma rifle raised before stopping short. "What the—" "Shh," Orla held up a hand. "Don't scare it, scare it." "Orla, that's a Kethril. Even the younglings have been documented." "It's practicing," she interrupted, watching as the cub tried again to produce that threatening rumble. Its whole body shook with the effort. "Look at it, James, it's trying to be scary." James lowered his rifle slightly, his tactical visor scanning the creature. Biometrics show elevated stress hormones. Heart rate equivalent is through the roof. He paused. "Where's its pack?" That was the question, wasn't it? Kethril never left their young unattended. The species operated in highly structured family units with multiple adults protecting the cubs at all times. For one to be alone out here, this close to the human installation, Orla's stomach tightened. The territorial dispute. 3 days ago, the human colony had been forced to expand their perimeter. Resources were scarce on this ice world, and the geothermal vents they needed for power generation happened to overlap with traditional Kethril hunting grounds. The colony director had assured everyone that the Kethril would simply relocate, that their species was adaptable. That conflict could be avoided. The growling cub told a different story. "We need to report this," James said, but his voice had lost its edge. He was looking at the small creature with something like guilt in his eyes. "Report what?" "That we found a baby trying to defend territory that used to belong to its family." Orla stood but kept her movement slow. "What do you think they'll do, James? Send it to xenobiology for study? Use it as leverage in the negotiations? We can't just—" James stopped as the cub suddenly went silent. The young Kethril's bioluminescence had shifted to deep purple, fear Orla remembered from the briefing packets. Its antennae swiveled toward the dark expanse beyond the station lights, detecting something they couldn't. Then Orla heard it. A real growl. Deep, resonant, and unmistakably adult. "James," she breathed. "I hear it." He raised his rifle again, stepping in front of her. "We need to get inside now." But Orla didn't move. She watched as massive shapes emerged from the darkness. 3 adult Kethril, their carapaces bearing the scars of long lives in this harsh environment. Their bioluminescence pulsed angry crimson, and their mandibles clicked with unmistakable hostility. The cub let out a high-pitched call and tried to run toward the adults, but its legs tangled and it tumbled into the snow. Instinct overrode logic. Orla darted forward, scooping up the small creature before it could hurt itself. It weighed less than she expected, all chitin and trembling limbs. "Orla, what are you doing?" James's voice was tight with panic. The adult Kethril had frozen, their aggressive displays suddenly uncertain. The largest one, probably the cub's mother given the matching bioluminescent patterns, took a half-step forward, then stopped. Orla held the youngster carefully, feeling its rapid heartbeat through its shell. It had stopped struggling and was staring up at her with 4 compound eyes that reflected the station lights like tiny galaxies. "We took their home," she said quietly, speaking as much to James as to the watching Kethril. "We pushed them out, disrupted their territory, scattered their family. And this little one—" She looked down at the cub, who was now making soft, almost melodic clicking sounds. It was trying to be brave, trying to protect what little was left. She took 3 steps forward, aware that she was well within striking distance of creatures that could tear her apart in seconds. The cub's mother tensed, mandibles spread wide. Slowly, carefully, Orla knelt and placed the young Kethril on the ground. It sat there for a moment, confused, before its mother rushed forward and swept it back with her forelimbs. The 3 adults surrounded the youngster, their bioluminescence shifting from red to cautious orange. The mother looked at Orla for a long moment, and Orla could have sworn she saw recognition there. Not gratitude exactly, but understanding. The Kethril family melted back into the darkness, their lights fading until only the distant stars remained. James let out a breath he'd been holding. That was the most reckless thing I've ever seen. Probably, Orla agreed, watching the empty darkness. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. But we're the ones who came here, James, to their world. The least we can do is remember that bravery isn't always about being the strongest. Sometimes it's about being kind when you have the power not to be. She turned back toward the station, where warm lights and coffee and the complicated politics of colony expansion waited. Behind her, carried on the frigid wind, she could have sworn she heard one last sound. A young Kethril's growl, still practicing, but somehow less alone. And Orla smiled. Retry,